الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد ومن تبع الدين وحكمنا في الدين تأويل وانفعنا ما علمتنا وعلمنا فعنا زين علما. Alhamdulillah, so last class we were just covering certain issues concerning dhikr, certain issues of fiqh, like the issue of whether you should say dhikr out loud or internally to yourself. We also covered, if you will, which is doing dhikr or reading the Quran in a group. What's the ruling of reading the Quran? And the scholars say that this can happen in 4 different ways. Like people reading the Quran in a group can happen in 4 possible different ways. One way is that one person reads and everybody else is listening. One person reads while everybody else is listening. And this is narrated by the Sahabas. The Sahabas used to do this. That sometimes they would get together and one of them would recite while the others would be listening. Those scholars have differed on this issue. طيب والله أعلم. As Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, وَمَنْ قَرَأَةُ وَاحِدٍ والباقون يستمعون له فلا يكره بغير خلاف وهي مستحبة وهي التي كان الصحابة يفعلونها كبموسى وغيره. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions in his fatwa that as for one reciting and the others listening, then there's no problem with this, and this is an issue that there's no khilaf about. Rather, it's recommended, and the Sahaba used to do it like Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and others. The second possible scenario is that one recites, then the other one recites after. This is bil-idara. That one person is reciting, he reads a bit, and then the other person starts reciting, and he continues from there. So they're not reciting all the same thing, they're not reciting all at once, or rather it's one verse, another person recites another verse, or one page, the other person recites the other page. And this also is an issue that inshallah scholars have said there is nothing wrong with it, inshallah. Even more so if it's for the purpose of mudarasa. Even more so if it's the purpose of teaching and studying. So likewise, like most tajweed circles is how it functions, right? One student reads a page, the other student reads another page, and they go in circles like that. Inshallah, this is fine also. This is fine also, especially even more so if it's done with the purpose of mudarasa and studying and so on and so forth. The third possible thing is that أن يقرأ قارئ ثم يقطع ثم يقرأ غيره بما بعد قراءته فذهب جمهور أهل العلم إلى أن ذلك حسن لا يكره. The third possibility is that one person is reciting and then he stops, and then the other person continues reciting from where he is, without necessarily the purpose of mudarasa. Okay? This issue, some scholars they said that it's best not to do so, but most scholars said it's fine. Most scholars said that this is fine also. Then the fourth possible scenario is that people all recite in the same voice. That people all recite in the same voice. They're all reciting the same thing, and they're all reciting it in one voice, right? And this is where scholars are different. This is where scholars are different a lot about. أن يقرأ الكل مجتمعين بصوت واحد. All of them recite together with one voice. So this is an issue that scholars are different in. The Shafi'i and the Hanabila, they say that it's permissible. Even more so if it's done with the purpose of teaching. Like you're teaching kids, so you make them all recite قل هو الله أحد in one voice. Even more so when it comes to the purpose of teaching, inshallah it's okay according to the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya. Although the Hanafiya, they say that it shouldn't be done, that it's disliked. طيب. So Ibn Taymiyyah mentions likewise here قراءة الإدارة حسنة عند أكثر العلماء ومن قراءة الإدارة قراءتهم مجتمعين بصوت واحد وللمالكية قولان في كراهتها or في كراهتها. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that pretty much what I said, that when it comes to people reciting one turn at a time, this is okay, according to most scholars, and including this is reciting in all in one voice. He mentions this is also okay with the majority of scholars he mentions here. Wallah alam, it might be best to avoid doing so, specifically if there's no purpose for it. So if it's done with the purpose of teaching, like kids, for example, so you all recite the Quran in one voice, just to make sure whatever they're all reciting it, inshallah it's okay. But outside of that, it's probably best to avoid doing so, because there's khilaf about the issue, والخروج من الخلاف مستحب, and you leaving what is scholars have differed on is recommended. Wallahu alam, and Allah knows best. So I hope that clarifies the issue of reciting the Quran in a group. As for other types of dhikr, right? As for other types of dhikr, what's the ruling of just coming together to do dhikr in general? There's no doubt that you coming together to do dhikr, if it's done as a sunnah, in the sense that people are doing this all the time at a specific time, and they're all coming together and they're all saying the same thing out loud in one voice, this is a bid'ah. This is a bid'ah. But scholars, they say that if it's done in the sense that by chance you come together and everybody's doing their own dhikr to themselves, then inshallah this is okay. And there are certain ahadith that point to the fact that the Sahabas, they would gather together and they would remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a hadith where the Sahabas were asked why they were sitting together, and they said, جلسنا نذكر الله ونحمده على ما هدانا للإسلام وعلى ما من به علينا. The hadith in Muslim. It's narrated that the Sahabas were sitting together and the Prophet said, ما أجلسكم? What's the thing that's making you sit down together in a group like this? And they said, we are remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are praising Him for Him having guided us to Islam and Him having favored us with it. Right? But the scholars say that this should be understood in the way that I explained. It's not they're all together saying dhikr together, one voice or anything like that, but rather that they happened to, by chance, all come together. It wasn't like it was preordained or it was an appointment. It wasn't like they all came together, so we're going to meet together at this specific time and do this specific thing. And likewise, it wasn't done out loud in one voice and they're all saying the same thing, but rather it was done individually to themselves. Shaykh al-Albani explains this hadith, and others scholars explain it that this is the correct meaning of it. Now, there's also another hadith that's narrated that the Prophet said, إن الله تعالى ملائكة يطوفون في الطرق يلتمسون أهل الذكر فإذا وجدوا قوما يذكرون الله تعالى تنادوا هل لهم إلى حاجتكم فيحفونهم بأجنحتهم إلى السماء الدنيا فيسألهم ربهم وهو أعلم ما يقول عبدي قال يقولون يسبحونك ويكبرونك ويحمدونك ويمجدونك. The hadith is muttafaq alayh. There's another hadith that mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certain angels that roam the earth, if you will, seeking the people of dhikr. Okay? And when they find them, they pretty much cover them with their wings. And then they go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah asks them, what were my slaves saying? Obviously Allah already knows that, but He's just asking them. And the angels will say, these slaves that were gathered together, they were doing tasbih, and they were doing takbir, and they were doing tahmeed, and they were doing tajmeed, and they're doing dhikr. But again, the scholars, they mention that this should be understood in light of how the Sahabas used to actually behave. And Shaykh al-Albani mentions a qa'ida, which is that you can't use a hadith, you can't use a hadith qawliya, a hadith that's speaking about a certain action, and understand it in a way that is different than how the Sahabas understood it. And so when we look at this hadith, we have to look at, okay, how did the Sahabas actually implement this hadith? There's no narration that mentions the Sahabas would sit together in one circle and they would all say things at one time in a loud voice. So someone can't come and take this hadith and say, look, these hadith mention that they were together and they were doing dhikr, so we can also do it like this. No, we have to say, okay, how did they actually implement this? And it becomes very clear that they didn't used to do this. In fact, there's a famous narration of Ibn Mas'ud that he came upon a people. We talked about that hadith for that after last class. That Ibn Mas'ud came upon a people, and the people, they were sitting together. This after the time the Prophet died, and they're sitting together, and they're all doing tasbih in one voice, and they're using rocks. And one of them would say, "Sabbihu mi'a," and he say tasbih 100 times, and then all say 100 times together. And Ibn Mas'ud ankara alayhim. This one was very strong, was very stern with them, and said, "This is a bid'ah what you're doing." So we have to understand these ahadith in light of the actions of the Sahabas, right? And the actions of the Sahabas were, okay, maybe they will come together بغير موعد وفعل it being preordained or pre-appointed, and they would maybe be doing dhikr to themselves, and every one of them would be doing dhikr to themselves, and so on and so forth, but it wouldn't be planned and everybody's doing the same one, and so on and so forth. This is how the scholars have explained this, and if you look at the a'mal, their actions, and the way they used to behave, and what's been narrated from them, it becomes very clear that this is how, inshallah, these ahadith were implemented by them. طيب. So based on this, Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah mentions الاجتماع على القراءة والذكر والدعاء حسن إذا لم يتخذ سنة راتبة ولا اقترن به منكر من بدعة. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that coming together to recite the Quran or to do dhikr or to do dua is fine, as long as it's not taken as a sunnah ratiba, as something that people are continuously doing every single Thursday after Asr. We're going to sit together, we're going to make dua, right? As long as it's not done like this, and as long as the actual gathering itself does not have any bid'ah in terms of how they're saying it. They're all saying it in one voice, they're moving their heads, getting in some type of spiritual drunkenness or whatever. They're using drums like the Sufiya yani. Right? So as long as those two things are not there, it's not taken as like a pre-appointed thing that they always do, and the actual gathering itself is not done in a way that is not narrated from the Salaf, then inshallah it's okay. Okay? Wallahu a'lam. Wallahu a'lam. And Imam al-Shatibi also mentions in al-I'tisam الاجتماع على القراءة والذكر بصوت واحد أعده الشاطبي مثلا الابتداع من في هيئات العبادات وكيفيتها، فقال رحمه الله، قال الشاطبي رحمه الله: ومنها أي البدعة الإضافية الالتزام كيفيات وهيئات معينة كالذكر بهيئة الاشتباع على صوت واحد، ومنها التزام العبادات المعينة في أوقات معينة لم يوجد لها ذلك التعيين في شرعها. Shati mentions likewise pretty much what I mentioned, that people coming together and doing dhikr in one voice is a bid'ah. Okay? So this is inshallah, this is how these ahadith should be understood. Okay? That people can come together to do dhikr if it happens by chance, and they're not doing it in a bid'ah way in terms of them all singing it in one voice and so on and so forth, because this was not narrated from the Sahabas. And so I hope that's clear. Now, as a side note, this is a side point, just to make you understand bid'ah. Let's just explore the concept of bid'ah for a second, so that people understand the different forms of bid'ah. So first and foremost, bid'ah is مَا أَحْدَثَ فِي الدِّينِ مِمَّا لَيْسَ مِنْهُ بِقَصْدِ التَّعَبُّدِ. Bid'ah is what's innovated in the religion that has no proof for it, and people are doing it to seek Allah's pleasure or to seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, this is taken directly, this ta'rif, this definition is taken directly from the hadith, مَنْ أَحْدَثَ فِي أَمْرِنَا هَذَا مَا لَيْسَ مِنْهُ فَوَرَدْ. The Prophet said the person who innovates in this religion when it's not from it, it will not be accepted. So bid'ah هو ما أحدث في الدين مما ليس منه بقصد التعبد. It's what's innovated in this religion that has no proof for it, and people are doing it with the intention of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Shaykh Fawzan mentions, bid'ah can happen in two different ways. Bid'ah i'tiqadiyya wa bid'ah amaliyya. Bid'ah can either happen in terms of a belief or in terms of an action. Bid'ah can either happen in terms of a belief or in terms of an action. So for example, a bid'ah that has to do with belief is the bid'ah of the Asha'ira or the Mu'tazila or the Maturidiyya or the Khawarij, the Murjiya, and so on and so forth. Right? So this is a bid'ah that has to do with belief. Right? So for example, we have the famous narration of Imam Malik, right? The man came and he asked him about al-istiwa. Imam Malik said, al-istiwa ma'aloom, wal-kayfiyatu majhul, wal-imam bihi wajib, was-su'al anhu bid'ah. And you asking about this issue is a bid'ah. You having this type of belief, or innovating this type of belief, and so on and so forth, and speaking about this issue is the issue of bid'ah. So bid'ah can sometimes be in terms of belief. See? The second type of bid'ah, Shaykh Fawzan mentions, is bid'atun amaliyya, is a bid'ah that has to do with actions. Is a bid'ah that has to do with actions. For example, the mawlid, right? This is an action that people do. It's not a belief, right? Maybe there's a belief connected to it, but fundamentally it's an action. When it comes to a bid'ah amaliyya, it can happen in four different ways. A bid'ah of action, as the Shaykh mentions, can happen in four different ways. It can happen fi asl al-ibadah. It can happen in terms of people innovating a new act of worship. It can happen in the form of people actually innovating a new form of worship. For example, the mawlid. In the mawlid, there's no shahid. There's no proof for this action. It's not like salah or fasting. Someone could make up a new prayer, a new salah or something like that, or a new type of salah. But salah is an action that we've seen before. It's an action in Islam. But the mawlid, celebrating birthdays, is something that there's no proof for in the Quran nor in the Sunnah. So this is a bid'ah fi asl al-ibadah. You innovated, completely originated a new type of worship that has no similarity to anything else in the Sharia, to any other act of worship in the Sharia, right? This is ما يكون في أصل العبادة. The second type, this is like there's two types of bid'ah, right? A bid'ah has to do with belief, and a bid'ah that has to do with actions. The bid'ah that has to do with action has 4 subcategories. The first one is you innovating a complete new act of worship, right? The second one is ما يكون في زيادة على عبادة مشروعة. The second type of bid'ah that has to do with actions is you adding upon an act of worship that's already present. Is you adding upon an act of worship that's already present. Right? So it's not that you innovated an entirely new act of worship, but you added to an act of worship what was not there before. So for example, you came up with what's it called? Let me try to find an example here. I don't see how someone would do this, but let's say for example, instead of praying Fajr 2 rak'ahs, I'm going to pray 3 rak'ah. So praying Fajr is an action that we know, but now you added something to that act of worship that made it a bid'ah. Right? So you added something to an act of worship that was already present. Right? You can see this maybe in actions like Hajj, for example. People add things to Hajj that were not there. Or Umrah, for example. Some people, they think that from the Rukn, from the Arkan of Umrah is you going visiting the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Izarat Qubur Nabi ﷺ. Or Izarat Qabr Nabi ﷺ. You visiting the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? And they think that this is something that you have to do. Nah. And if someone believes this and implements this, and this is a bid'ah that has to do with زيادة على عبادة المشروعة. You're adding on to an act of worship, which is the Umrah. You're adding to that something that is not there, something that was not there before. Right? The third type of way that bid'ah can happen is what Imam Shati mentioned here, في كيفيات. The way you do the act of worship. The way that you do the act of worship. And this is where this falls into. Doing dhikr is act of worship, right? But you doing dhikr in this specific fashion, with one voice, moving your head, shaking or whatever, this is a bid'ah. So in the way that you do it, في كيفية صفات العبادة or في كيفية أداء العبادة, in the way that you're doing the action, it's a bid'ah. Right? This is sometimes called bid'atun idafiyya, as Imam Shati mentions it. Right? The fourth type of bid'ah can happen في تخصيص وقت لعبادة مشروعة لم يخصصه الشرع. The fourth type is you specifying a time for an act of worship that the Sharia has not specified. Imam Shati mentioned it here. ومنها التزام العبادات المعينة في أوقات معينة لم يوجد لها ذلك التعيين في الشريعة. That you specify a time for act of worship. Right? So someone says, I'm going to fast specifically Fridays because I think this has a type of fadila. Fridays is one of the greatest day in the week, so I'm going to specify it with fasting. Fasting is an act of worship. The person is not doing the fast in a way that is bid'ah. He's fasting, he's just fasting, he's not adding anything to it. But he specified a time that the Sharia never specified. Okay? And this is not like me saying I'm going to memorize the Quran after Fajr. This is fine. As long as you're just doing that because it's just convenient. It's just more convenient for me to memorize the Quran after Fajr, so that's what I do. That's fine. But if someone wants to think me memorizing Quran after Fajr has a specific type of fadila, a specific type of blessing to it, and this is a special time, no. This becomes bid'ah, Okay? So these are the 4 different ways that bid'ah can manifest itself when it comes to al-amal, to actions, And this is what we're talking about here. Reciting the Quran is fine. Reciting the Quran in the gathering is fine as long as the kayfiyah, the way that you're doing it, is not a way that's bid'ah. For example, bisawtin wahid, in one voice. Same thing with dhikr, and so on and so forth. And Allah knows best, And Allah knows best. Okay, we covered enough of this, alhamdulillah. We're going to move now to the actual adhkar itself. So that was like 3 classes where we're just covering the fiqh and so on and so forth. We covered the greatness of doing dhikr, and then we covered some of the fiqh behind it, just to understand how we should be trying to do our dhikr. So now inshallah we'll go into the actual adhkar itself, right? So let me just change my notes here. So what we're going to be starting with is the adhkar that you do throughout your day. After that, we're going to go over the adhkar of the morning and the evening specifically, and then we're going to be done. In terms of the adhkar that you do throughout your day, we're going to be covering before sleeping, after waking, like when you wake up from sleep, before entering the bathroom, after leaving the bathroom, when getting dressed, when getting undressed, when starting wudu, after completing wudu, before eating, after eating, when leaving the house, when entering the house. Those are the type of adhkar we're going to be covering. Of course, most of you guys already know these adhkar. That's not what we're trying to do here. But what we're trying to do is understand them, right? Because we covered it before. Imam Nawawi mentioned this, Shaykh Islam Taymiyya mentioned this, Ibn Qayyim mentions this, right? That the goal behind these adhkar is not for us to say it, but it's for us to feel it, yani, right? Hudur al-qalb, that our heart is present while we are actually saying these adhkar. Imam Nawawi said that just like you do tadabbur of the Quran, you should do tadabbur of the adhkar. So that's what we're going to be trying to do, right? So these adhkar, most of us, we memorize them. A lot of these, some of you guys might have memorized them when you were young too. But do we actually understand why we're saying it, right? Do we actually reflect on the meanings of what we're saying when we're saying it, right? So that's what we're going to be trying to do. Okay, so I'm not necessarily going to be trying to go over like adhkars that we haven't heard before, because there are some. Like in Hisn Muslim, you have many adhkar there that I'm sure many people here don't not necessarily know. But the point is more specifically to understand in a deeper sense these adhkar. So it's about quality, if you will, and not quantity, or at least that's what we're aiming for. So there are many adhkar that you can do before sleeping, but we're going to cover the most common one, which is Bismika Allahumma amutu wa ahya. Right, this is the most common one, probably one of the shortest ones, which is in your name, O Allah, I die and I live. In your name, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I die and I live. So this adhkar here, it's recommended to say it before sleeping. And when we reflect upon it, we have to first reflect on sleep itself, right? When ayati al-layl wa nahar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that from His signs is night itself. From His signs are night itself. And likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the issue of sleeping, right? Allah yatawaffa al-anfusa hina mawtiha wallati lam tamut fi manamiha فيمسك التي قضى عليها الموت إلى أجل مسمى ويخرج أخرى إلى فيمسك الذي قضى عليها الموت ويخرج أخرى إلى أجل مسمى. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that يتوفى الأنفس حين موتها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He takes the soul of people at its death. Allah is referring to sleep here as being death. Allah يتوفى الأنفس حين موتها أي حين نومها. Allah literally clearly referred to sleep as being death. And that's why the scholars have mentioned many times that sleep is a cousin of death. That sleep is a cousin of death. Right? And that's why they mentioned that from the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah, from the proofs of Yawm al-Qiyamah is sleep. From the proofs of Yawm al-Qiyamah is sleep. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single night He causes you to die and He brings you back to life. And that's why we're going to see that many of the adhkar that you do before sleeping and after sleeping have to do with that. They have to do with reminding you of Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right? Like if we're going to talk about this later, but if you look at the adhkar after you wake up, it's what? Alhamdulillah di ahyana ba'da ma amatani wa ilayhi nushur. We're going to cover this later, but the adhkar that you're supposed to say when you wake up is what? All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who caused me to come back to life after I was dead, referring to sleep. And to Him is my return, and on the day of judgment. Right? Allah says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِ مَنَامُكُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ وَابْتِغَاءُكُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Allah says, from His signs is your sleep during the night and the day, and you seeking from His provision. So it's important that we sometimes stop and reflect on the reality of sleep and how every time we go to sleep, we might not wake up. Every time we go to sleep, we might not wake up. So how we go to sleep is very important. What we do before we go to sleep is very important. And we're going to see Ibn Qayyim mention this. Ibn Qayyim mentions that ideally every single time we go to sleep, we should do muhasabah. We should bring ourselves to account and we should do tawbah. So that we go to sleep after having done tawbah, so that if we die in our sleep, we're going to die in a state of tawbah. Likewise, when we talk about the issue of making wudu, why do we make wudu before we go to sleep? You might die when you sleep. There's obviously the hadith that mentions that malaika, the angel, will be making istighfar for you, so and so, or making dua for you. But likewise, you might die in your sleep. So you want to die in a state of wudu, you want to die in a state of tahara. Right? Likewise, when you look at this hadith specifically, it says what? Bismika, in your name. Right? Why do we say, let's take it back. Why do we say Bismillah? What's the reason behind us saying Bismillah before we eat? Bismillah when we enter the car. Bismillah, 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 right? Bismillah before we recite a surah. Like, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us to say Bismillah at so many different times in our lives? What's the hikmah behind it?
Maybe to remember Allah in terms of those specific actions and things.
No, that's true. What else? No, that's one point. كل أمر ذي بال لا يبدأ بسم الله فهو أبتر أو فهو أقرع. The Prophet said that every issue of importance that does not start with the name of Allah then it's cut off. And it's cut off from good. It's cut off from barakah. So one of the reasons why we say Bismillah before drinking, before eating, and so on and so forth, is in order to get the barakah of the thing. There's a hadith, I think it's narrated by Imam Ahmed, that the Prophet was sitting with his companions and they were eating, and then an A'rabi, an Arab came, a Bedouin came, and he ate the food without saying Bismillah. And the Prophet said, and the Prophet Muhammad said, "Lo samma Allah lakafakum." If he had said Bismillah, this food would have sufficed all of you. But because the Arabi, this Bedouin that came, he just ate the food without saying Bismillah, the food went away very quickly. But the Prophet said that if he had said Bismillah, the food would have had barakah in it enough that it would have filled the Bedouin, and we also have some more. Right? So by us saying Bismillah, it adds barakah to the action that we do. There's also other thing. Two other things specifically that I'm looking for. Another reason is I was going to
say, I don't know if it's only specific for food, but like, so the jinn doesn't eat or the jinn doesn't.
That's a good point, right? We know that if you don't say Bismillah before you eat, the jinn will also eat with you, right? Or shaitan, yani. Another reason why, for general ones, is sincerity. It reminds us to be sincere, right? It reminds us to be sincere. They're remembering as well that I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, right? In the name of Allah. In the name of Allah, I'm doing this. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not doing this because of my friends. I'm doing this in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And then the third reason scholars have mentioned is al-ista'ana. Some scholars say that the ba here is bad ista'ana, that we're seeking Allah's aid in the action. We're seeking Allah's aid in that. So we're seeking Allah's barakah in the action. We're reminding ourselves to be sincere. And likewise, we're seeking Allah's aid in the action. Right? So when we're saying Bismika, in your name, or in your name, or in you, or with you, if you will, Allahumma, oh Allah, I die and I live. I would say I die here is referring to yani sleeping first and foremost, right? It's as if we're seeking Allah's aid in sleeping. And one of the scholars said that one of the reasons why is because when you're sleeping, you're completely vulnerable. When we're sleeping, we're completely vulnerable. It doesn't matter how much martial arts you know, how many firearms you might own, and how big your muscles are. When you're sleeping, you are completely vulnerable to anything. Right? Likewise, a lot of people deal with, insomnia. Right? And many people deal with difficulty sleeping. And in fact, we're not even able to control when we sleep. When you think about it, we're not able to control when we sleep. Yeah, I'm going to try to go to sleep. Right? It's not like I can just say, okay, I'm going to go to sleep, and I just, right? I have to. It takes for some people. I mean, Allah gave people different abilities, but for some people, it's very difficult for them to go to sleep. Right? They stay up in bed for a long time before they actually fall asleep. So we're seeking Allah's help in doing this action. Even the action of sleeping, we need Allah to help us to do it, and we need Allah's protection when we're sleeping, because we know Shaitan can try to do things to us. Right? We know the hadith that the person who misses Fajr, then Shaitan has urinated in their ear and so on and so forth. Right? Likewise, the scholars, they mention, and I mentioned this before, we mentioned this book Al-Afkar, that قالوا العلماء وحكمة الدعاء عند إرادة النوم أن تكون خاتم أعمالهم. The scholars mentioned that from the hikmah of someone saying these Afkar before going to sleep is so your last action may be a good deed. Right? And that's why it's recommended that before you go to sleep and you pray 2 rak'ahs and so on and so forth, that you're going and you sleep in a state of tahara and so on and so forth. Right? Likewise, we say Allahumma amutu wa ahya. With you I die and with you I live. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this goes back to what I say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that's able to actually make us go to sleep. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that's going to make us able to wake up. So it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's actually able to make us even live and die. So reminding ourselves that we can't do anything. Even living we can't do it. Even sleeping we can't do it without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's aid. So we're seeking Allah's aid, we're seeking Allah's blessing, and we're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help in doing this action. The explainer here says, as for his saying Bismika Allahumma, Allahumma means Ya Allah. Right? So let's talk a bit about Allahumma. Allahumma and Ya Allah mean the same thing. Allahumma and Ya Allah mean the same thing. But Allahumma gives us two things. Okay, Allahumma, there's two benefits behind saying Allahumma specifically, as Ibn Uthaymin and other scholars have mentioned. The first one is when you say Ya Allah, Ya comes before Allah. When I say Ya Allah, the harf nida la, Ya comes first, and then the name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. When you say Allahumma, the name of Allah comes first. Right? So Allahumma, you're starting with Allah's name. Allah's name comes first. Nothing comes before him. Even Ya, nothing comes before Allah. Right? Because Allahumma literally means Allahu and then Humma. Or specifically Allahu and then Ma. The meaning with the shadda. Okay? That's one benefit behind saying Allahumma instead of Ya Allah. Because when you're saying Allahumma, you're putting Allah first. Right? Likewise, Ibn Athim mentions this, is the meme. Allahumma. The meme in the Arabic language gives off a meaning, an atf, gives off yani, the feeling of careness and the feeling of love. Yani. That's why the word mahabba, right? Love. The mother, right? The meme gives off this type of meaning. So when you're saying Allahumma, there's that sense of an atf, yani, that sense of care, that sense of love that the meme shows. Ibn Athim mentions this. Right? So in saying Allahumma, there's these two extra benefits instead of just saying Ya Allah. That was a side benefit. So we say Ya Allah, which means oh Allah, right? That other Bismillah, seeking Allah's help and assistance in doing something. So the meaning here is I sleep seeking help in you, asking for your safekeeping, hoping for your protection, safety, and well-being. And likewise for the blessing in our actual sleep itself. Right? He's saying, Amutu wa ahya, I die and I live, yani for you. Means I'm remembering your name even in this condition. So with the mention of your name, I'm given life, and with your name, I die. Right? So it goes back to Allah's statement, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. Verily my prayer and my rituals and my death and my life is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So the Shara says here, these words contain an indication that a Muslim is never without need of remembering his Lord, even for the blinking of an eye, at the time of sleeping, awakening from sleep, and in all of his affairs. Right? So remembering ourselves that I need you for everything. As a hadith mentions, as a dua mentions, the Prophet used to ask, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to ask Allah not to leave him to his soul for a blink of an eye. We're going to go off topic here again. Supporting my khutbah last week, or like last Friday. Yani, the Prophet Muhammad used to say the dua, وَلَا تَكِلْنِي إِلَى نَفْسِي طَرْفَةَ عَيْنٍ. It's from the adhkar of the Sabah wa Sah. Do not leave me to myself, even for a blink of an eye. This is the Prophet Muhammad. He had the most pure and the most beautiful soul. But even he used to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to leave him to his own devices, even for a blink of an eye. So this is where the statement, believe in yourself, or have confidence in yourself, la yajuz, this is not right. Islamically speaking, this is not right. How can you have confidence in yourself when Allah says, Inna nafsa la amaratu bisu? When Allah says our soul commands us to do evil. Illa ma rahim Allah, illa ma rahim Rabbi, except for the soul that Allah has mercy upon. How can we say, put confidence in yourself, trust in yourself, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas antum fuqara'u ila Allah, wallahu ghayru hamid. When Allah says, oh mankind, you are in complete need of me, and I'm the free of need and the most praiseworthy. So why would you want to put confidence in something that commands you to do evil, except for the souls Allah purifies, and by its very nature is weak? As Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, يعني, وَالْفَقْرُ وَصْفٌ لَازِمٌ أَبَدًا كَمَا الْغِنَى وَصْفٌ لَهُ ذَاتِ. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that poverty is a characteristic that I always have, while you being free of need Allah is from your very essence. So as Muslims, we don't put confidence in ourselves. We put confidence in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as us, we know we can't do anything with Allah's help. So that statement, yani, believe in yourself, be confident in yourself, you have to be careful with that statement. Yani, تجب الثقة بالنفس العربية, yani. And Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Sheikh, the first Grand Mufti of Saudi, when he was asked about this statement, he said, La yajuz. Yani, Su'ila, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Sheikh, the first Grand Mufti of Saudi, he was asked, يعني هل يجوز يقول الإنسان تجب الثقة بالنفس? Is it permissible for someone to say you have to be confident in yourself? And he said لا يجوز, it's not permissible. Because going back to what I was saying, that as Muslims we should put confidence in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So it's haram to say I'm confident in myself.
No. It's not. Confidence is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's meant here is, the translation might be a bit difficult. What's meant here is you, saying like you have to put trust in yourself. As Muslims, you have to put trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in ourselves. Ourselves, we can't do anything. So that doesn't mean that you should be not confident in the sense of being determined to do things and accomplishing things. Of course, we should be confident in that sense. In Arabic, it's called al-azm, being determined, being confident, and seeking our goals. But when we're seeking those goals, we shouldn't think, oh, I'm going to do this by myself, and I'm so smart that I can do this, and I'm going to put trust in how smart I am. Nah, doesn't matter how smart we are, we're never going to be able to even walk down the street if Allah does not help us. Right? That's the point. Yeah. So I don't want to get people people confused there. So I hope it's clear. So this is what's meant here. So how did I get here? So it's very important that we understand this. We can't do anything without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. And a lot of the adhkars that we do, they remember it. They're remembrance of that. A lot of the statements that we say, a lot of these adhkar, they're reminding us, I can't do this without you. The adhkar you say when you get into your car, right? Subhanallah sakharana hada wa ma kunna lahu muqtarinin. All praise to Allah who made this subservient to me, and I will not be able to do so without him, right? So anyways, so going back to the point. So here he is at the time of sleeping, sealing his deeds of the day with remembrance of Allah. Like I said, one of the benefits of doing this, like saying this adhkar before going to sleep and other adhkar, is that you're sealing your day with a good deed. You're making sure you go to sleep with a good deed. And as the Prophet said, every slave is going to be resurrected upon what he died upon. Likewise, the first actions upon awakening is remembrance of Allah, as we're going to cover. He's giving the utmost care to the remembrance of Allah at every moment of his day. In this way, he is in the remembrance of Allah, the one free of all imperfections, when life is given to him upon awakening, and when he's taken upon sleeping, and at the time of being raised to life after death on the day of resurrection. Then he goes into the issue of sleep being similar to death, and we already talked about this. They mentions here likewise, the sleeping person resembles the dead because movement in him has ceased, and his ability to discern what is happening around him is absent. For this reason, liability and responsibility for one's action is lifted until he awakens from his sleep. That's another topic. So this is our reflection on this statement before going to sleep. So every time we go to sleep, of course, we should say Bismika Allahumma amutu wa ahya, and we should try to keep in mind what we talked about. Okay, this, of course, everybody here, I'm sure, already knows this adhkar, or most likely. But when we're saying it, and this is a reminder for myself, are we actually keeping in mind this? That in your name, I'm seeking your help. I'm seeking blessing through this sleep, right? Like you look at the Salaf, they used to sleep very little, right? Ibn Bukhari used to wake up at least sometimes 17 times in one night. He'd wake up, write a hadith, go back to sleep. Wake up, write a hadith, go back to sleep, right? And that's, you have to keep in mind, Imam Bukhari used to break down his night into 3 parts, right? Imam Bukhari used to have one portion to sleep, one portion to study, and one portion to pray. Even in the portion of the night when he was sleeping, he'd wake up. The servant said at least 17 times. Imagine that, Kayf, how? How's that possible? Maybe because they actually had barakah in their sleep. Us, we sleep 8 hours, I'm still tired. Why? Maybe we're not saying this and actually believing in it, right? 9 hours, I still feel tired. 6 hours, I still feel tired. Some people, they sleep 4 hours, they're good to go. So we ask Allah, what we're saying, that maybe if we attended the meaning of what we're saying, maybe it would actually help us in actually achieving these things. Allah knows best, Allah knows best. Moving on to the next one, which is what we say after we wake up. So after we wake up, there are many adhkar, mainly 2 adhkar that you can say. Likewise, reading surah in the last 2 pages of surah 2, Ali Imran. But we're just going to cover one, right? We're just going to cover one. We're going to focus more on quality than quantity. Although I do highly recommend you guys read Hisn Muslim, right? And have, of course, the app, or at least one type of app on your phone. And before going to sleep, if you haven't memorized them, you can still always just go over them. So after waking up from sleep, one of the adhkar you're supposed to say is Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyana ba'da ma amatana wa ilayhi nushur. All praise belongs to Allah, who gave us life after He caused us to die, and upon Him is the resurrection. Right? So again, we can clearly see here how sleep is linked with death. All praise due to Allah, who brought me back to life, from my sleep, after I was dead, in my sleep, and to Him is my return on the Day of Judgment. So I'm reminding myself of the Day of Judgment, and that this issue, and from His signs is the sleep that we do. And from the signs of the Day of Judgment and Allah's ability is the fact that every single day He causes us to die and come back to life. Right? And everything on this earth, everything sleeps. Nothing does not sleep on this earth. Everything sleeps at least in one shape or form. Right? This point here was best mentioned before, but I sort of mentioned this. Ibn Qayyim mentions this in his book Al-Ruh. But he mentions here, this is a better point to add to the previous hadith, but it's mentioned here in my notes. قال ابن القيم ومن أنفعها أن يجلس الرجل عندما يريد النوم ساعة يحاسب فيها على ما خسره وربحه في يومه ثم يجد له توبة نصوحا بينه وبين ما بين الله سبحانه وتعالى فينام على تلك التوبة ويعزم على ألا يعود الذنب إذا استيقظ ويفعل هذا كل ليلة فمات من ليلته مات على توبته. Ibn Qayyim mentions that one of the things that's beneficial for someone to do is that before going to sleep, someone brings himself to account. Ask yourself, what did I do today? Did I achieve my goals? How much sunnah prayers did I do? How much sunnah prayers did I miss? Did I pray all of them? Did I do my morning adhkar, my evening adhkar? Did I call my parents? There's a lot of things we could be doing a lot better. And we ask Allah to help us. So the person brings himself to account. And then the person does tawbah for those mistakes that he or she did in the day. So that then the person will have slept on this tawbah. And that he has a strong determination when he wakes up not to make the same mistakes again. So that if he dies that night, he died upon a state of tawbah. Okay? It's a very good practice that we should be doing. So again, this was best said in the previous hadith, or the previous dua, but it's fine. Okay. So sleep itself and Him bringing us back to life is from the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, right? As I covered. Likewise, it shows us of our complete need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that even for sleeping we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us, and even for waking up we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to wake us. Because if Allah wanted to, He'd keep our soul and khalas, we're dead. Right? So we're not even in control of when we wake up. We're not in control of when we go to sleep. We can try. And likewise, we're not in control of when we wake up. How many times did we put our alarm and we didn't wake up? Because Allah didn't want to. Did not want us to. Right? But another fact that is mentioned is, why did the Prophet ﷺ used to sleep on his right side? What was the hikmah behind sleeping on your right side specifically?
The heart is most on your left side.
Sure. It's not the reason though. It's not the one that I've read, unless you heard it somewhere else. When you're in the grave, you're put on your right side. Right? When you're in the grave, you're put on your right side facing the qibla. And likewise, making wudu before going to sleep. When you're before, ghusl, right? They wash your body and they make wudu to your body. Right? So we go to sleep having done wudu, and we go to sleep on our right side, reminding us of the grave. I'm going to be in the grave similarly to how I'm sleeping right now. On my right side, ideally in a state of tahara. Because they're going to have done the ghusl on my body and then make wudu on my body. Right? So there's a lot that can be said. And then if you're mentioning this, right? Bismika Allahumma amut, in your name I go to sleep and I die. You mean mention amut, I die and I go and come back, right? And then when you wake up you say Alhamdulillah ba'da matani wa nushur. All praise due to Allah who gave us life after He caused us to die, referring to the sleep that you just had. And to Him is the resurrection. You remind yourself of the Day of Judgment. Right? You can see how the belief in the Day of Judgment should be directly tied throughout our lives. And if you look at the adhkar, a lot of them deal with this. When you enter your car, right? Subhanallah sakharana hadha wa kunna lahu muqtarin wa inna rabbina munqalibun. Right? All praise to Allah who made this subservient to us and will not be able to do so, and to Him is our return on the Day of Judgment. Right? When before you go to sleep, after you wake up from sleep, when you're traveling, there's also mention of what could be understood as the Day of Judgment. Right? So a lot of these adhkar remind us of the Day of Judgment, and how throughout our days we should be reminded of the Day of Judgment and the reality of this life. The sharih here, the explainer, Shaykh Abu Muhammad Abu Ra'uf, he mentions, as for his saying, Alhamdulillah, as for his saying, all praise belongs to Allah who gave us life after He caused us to die, referring to sleep, it entails praising Allah for this great blessing and immense gift, the return to life after taken away, referring to awakening after sleep. Right? He mentions it's well known that when a human being is asleep, he's shut down and suspended from seeking the benefits of life, and more importantly, he's unable to perform acts of worship. Every single time Allah gives us another day, Allah gives us another time to get closer to Allah. How many people right now wish they had one more day? When we go to sleep and wake up, Allah's giving us that other opportunity. Allah's giving us that extra opportunity to give more prayers in, to make tawbah, to rectify our affairs and so on and so forth. So Alhamdulillah, right? We're saying all praise belongs to Allah. And we know that Hamd هو ذكر صفات المحبوب مع التعظيم والمحبة, right? Alhamd is ذكر صفات المحبوب, or ذكر صفات الكمال المحبوب. Is, as Ibn Qayyim mentions, Alhamd is that you mention the great characteristics of the one that you love out of love and out of glorification. Right? So you're praising Allah for doing this action, this great action. And of course, included in hamd is a type of shukr. You're also thanking Him for this. So you're praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this great ability that He does, that He has, of calling us to die and calling us to bring back to life. And likewise, we're thanking Him for doing this, for Him bringing us back to life. Right? Because many people do not have the opportunity. So when we wake up, we should see it as Allah's giving me an extra opportunity now to rectify my affairs that He didn't give a lot of people. A lot of people are dying in their sleep. Right? So that's one reflection we should be saying when we're saying this. Hence, when he awakens, that which prevented him from worldly religious action is removed. So he praises Allah. Right? This thing that would prevent me from continuing to do good deeds has been removed. So I'm praising Him for it. The Majestic, the Most High, for giving him this favor, and he thanks Him for this gift and generosity. Babe. Likewise, we're also thanking Allah for the sleep itself. Right? Imagine if you can't sleep. I don't know if anybody here has ever dealt or is dealing with insomnia. It's extremely frustrating. Insomnia is a very scary type of illness that someone can have. You can't sleep. It's horrible. It's not fun at all. Imagine, like, some people, they can't sleep. They have to take drugs to go to sleep, and even those drugs, they don't give them a good sleep. I've seen this myself. So the benefit and this great ni'mah of actually being able to go to sleep and actually having a good night's sleep. How many Palestinians right now can't go to sleep? Right? So alhamdulillah. From the great
I was gonna say, also another benefit is never asked to only need to sleep like 8 hours or 6 hours. We could have required to sleep like 15 hours.
That's a good point, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to sleep a relatively short amount of time compared to how much time we spend waking, right? Another thing that shocked me when I remember Sheikh Abdullah Kabila mentioned this, it shocked me, Yani. Let's say, for example, you lived 80 years, right? So you lived 80 years. You can take out at least 10 years from that, or 8 years, because you don't really remember much, right? I mean, some people have very good memories. They can remember what happened before they were 8, but most people, they can't, right? So you take about 8 years from that. And then you can most likely cut that time almost in half, because half the time you're sleeping, right? Maybe not exactly half the time, but a big portion of your life you're actually sleeping. So in those 80 years, how much time were you actually awake in those 80 years? If you put it all together, you might find out that in reality, you only lived around 40 years. In terms of actually being aware and being there, it's actually only 40 years. Because about half that time you were asleep, then you can take out about 8 years or so from that, because it's time that you weren't really aware of what was going on anyways. So our lives are actually extremely short if you put in that aspect of sleep, Yani. So anyways, from the benefits of sleep is that it reminds a human being of death, which is the inevitable end of every human being, the destination of every living being, except the ever-living who will never die. So it should push us to make tawbah, as Ibn Qayyim was mentioning, right? Similarly, in the awakening from sleep is a proof of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one free of imperfections, to resurrect the physical bodies after their death and to return life to them after their souls have been taken. For this reason, at the time of awakening from sleep, the Prophet said, all praise belongs to Allah, who gave us life after He caused us to die, and upon Him is a resurrection. As for His saying, and to Him is a resurrection, and nushur refers to when the human beings will be raised up on the day of resurrection and will be given life after having been caused to die. So from the names of Yawm al-Qiyamah has many different names, right? And the general principle, as Imam Qurtubi mentions this and others, is the more something has a name for it, the more important it is. The more something has a name for it, the more important it is. And even in linguistics, they teach us this. In linguistics, they teach us that in any language, the more people gave a name for something, the more it shows their importance. So, yani, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of Aboriginal languages have a lot of names for snow. specifically the tribes that like are in the north. Yani. So in any language, they mention this. Yani. In the Arabic language, we know, for example, there are many different names for the camel. So many different names for the camel. Ibn, Naqa, Jamal, Ba'ir. And so many different names. Same thing for the sword. Qutb mentions like there's like 400 different words for the sword in the Arabic language. So the more something has a name for it, the more it shows its importance. Hence why there are many different names for the Quran, right? Al-Kareem, Al-Hakim, Al-Muhkam, Al-Tanzeel, right? There are many different names of Allah, of course. There are many different names for the Prophet Muhammad, Ahmed, Muhammad, right? Muhyi, and other names that have been narrated. And likewise, there are many different names for the Day of Resurrection. Yawm al-Hasra, Yawm al-Hasra, Yawm al-Hasr, Yawm al-Taghabun, Yawm al-Azifa, Yawm al-Qiyamah, Yawm al-Din, Yawm al-Nashr. Many different names for the Day of Judgment, right? So, an-Nushur, Nashara specifically means to raise something. The verb Nashara, Yanshuru, specifically means to raise something, like to raise something up. I think to spread also. Yani. So the using of the word nushur is specific. The Prophet would have said, and to him is the qiyamah, is the standing. To him is the deen, yani, the day, like the day of judgment, right? The Prophet specifically said, and to him is the resurrection. Yani. Nushur specifically means yani, to be raised up. So just like I rose up from my sleep, I'm going to raise up from my grave, or come out of it, right? Be raised from my grave. Hence, the Prophet ﷺ calls to our attention by mentioning the return of the awake state after the state of sleeping, which is a type of death. As mentioned previously, the confirmation of the return to life after death. On the day of resurrection, the day when all people will stand before the Lord of Al-Alameen. In the same vein, is confirmed in the Imam Bukhari's book, Al-Adab al-Mufrad, who said, when the Prophet intended to sleep, he will put his hand under his right cheek and say, O Allah, protect me from your punishment on the day that you resurrect your servants. And protect me from the punishment of the grave and punishment of the day of judgment. So most of the adhkar, if not all of them that refer to sleep, like most of the adhkar to say before going to sleep, all do with it, all are correlated and related to the day of judgment. Likewise, those that you say when you wake up, all of them are correlated with the day of judgment. Okay? So we can see the importance of the belief in the day of judgment. That's why if not the next book, but the book after that, I'll see, is going to be about the day of judgment. The names of the Day of Judgment, what happens on the Day of Judgment, the different issues that happen. It's very important to study that. It's very, very important. That's why most of Juz Amma is about Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? And Tawheed, yani. And a lot of the Quran is about Yawm al-Qiyamah also. No. Okay, moving forward. Now we're going to talk about a different topic. Probably going to end on this very soon, which is before entering the bathroom. Before entering. Before entering the bathroom, exactly. So, now things you can see here. So, first and foremost, the fact that there are so many ahkam, there are so many rulings about using the bathroom, right? To the point that in books of fiqh, in books of the Sharia, Islamic law, there's always a chapter of using the restroom, right? Or if you want the chapter of tahara, then there's going to be the sub-chapter usually of istijmar, right? How do you clean yourself, the different types of water, bab al-niyah, and so on and so forth, right? Which shows the completeness of Islam. The completeness of Islam. And I'm sure a lot of you knows the story of a Jewish man came to Salman al-Farsi and he said, your Prophet, he taught you everything. He said, yes, even how to use the bathroom. This is fakhr, this is an honor for us, yani. That everything's covered. And I don't think Muslims understand this, yani. These people don't know how to use the restroom. And some Muslims, I don't know what happened to them, yani. You go to the masjid, it's horrible. On sister's side, I'm sure it's fine, but brothers, Allah musta'an, yani. Remember, I was speaking to Shaykh Rahman, he was mentioning, like, I'm thinking of making a khutbah just about this, yani. You come to the masjid, you see our brothers are leaving the bathroom, it's mind-boggling, yani. The point, literally, the person has to flush after you use the toilet. Grown men, we have to remind them. Every single stall has flush after you use the bathroom. It's not the kids that are doing this. Yawm al-Jum'ah, on a day where there is school, the bathroom is like Allah sign. So, when people say, "Oh, you guys are speaking about how to use the restroom and people are dying here, people are dying there," yeah, because you guys still don't know how to do it. You still don't know how to pray properly. Prayer is batil, akhi. You still don't know how to clean yourself properly. There's no salah for you. You have najasa, right? And they want to talk about, oh, you need to protest, you need to do salah. You need to learn your deen. You need to learn how to use the bathroom properly. So it's sad when Muslims don't even know this stuff. But anyways, it shows the greatness of Islam. These people, these kuffar, they don't know how to do anything, man. You see how they use the bathroom? It's horrible, right? It's horrible, yani. I think only those that converted to Islam truly understand this. The ni'mah of everything's clear, right? Everything's clear. How to deal in your marriage, how to deal with your family members, how to pray, how to use the bathroom, how to drive, everything's covered more or less, yani. Right? So we have to be very grateful for this, right? And that's why scholars mentioned that yani dhikr is one of the main ways to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we covered this before. That from the benefits of dhikr is that it makes you thankful to Allah, and it can directly be taken from the verse فَذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ وَاشْكُرُونِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Allah says, remember me and I remember you, and thank me. Right? And the scholars have mentioned there's a munasabah here. You can't thank Allah if you don't remember Him. So Allah's saying, remember me and then thank me. Because you can't thank someone that you don't even remember. So one of the greatest blessings of doing adhkar is that it makes you more thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And shukr is one of the greatest actions you can do. Right? So one of the benefits behind saying Bismillah Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. In the name of Allah, I seek refuge in you from al-khubuth. Scholars say that these are male jinn, and al-khaba'ith, female jinn. Okay? So the khubth literally means filthiness. So the jinn are, especially the jinn that aren't Muslim, and they are filthy by nature, and they're in filthy places, including the bathrooms. Okay? This is also a very important point. Muslims are not supposed to stay in the bathroom. Some people, they still don't know basic things. I mean, they're in the bathroom, they're on their phone, playing games, reading the newspaper. Just kuffar. Kuffar stay in the bathroom and they have books and, okay, I'm going to read my newspaper in the bathroom. Right? Or even worse, people are talking when they're using the bathroom. This is makruh, yani. It's not correct, yani. You're supposed to sit the least amount of time in the bathroom. The least amount of time. Right? And when you see people getting possessed and stuff like this, a lot of times because of this. They don't say the adhkar when they enter the bathroom. They maybe stay in the bathroom for a long time. This is when you start being exposed to the shayateen, and the shayateen can start playing with you. Right? Anyways. So why are we saying this? Why are we saying Bismillah? Why are we saying in the name of Allah, I seek refuge from you, from evil spirits and bad spirits? So again, we're saying Bismillah. So we're seeking Allah's help in doing this action of relieving ourselves. And we're also seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah in it, that relieves us, and we're also these means are definitely there, right? Likewise, clearly here we're seeking Allah's protection. And again, when you're using the bathroom, you're vulnerable. You have your pants down, right? Not to be graphic, but you literally say this in English, you have your pants down, right? When you're using the bathroom, anything can happen. Someone could easily harm you, even though you're so smart or whatever, or you're so strong. Someone can easily harm you when using the bathroom, right? So again, we're being reminded of Allah, of our need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even to relieve ourselves, and likewise to be protected, right? And we're going to, I'll cover this benefit at the end later. So the shahada the spinning says here, the saying of Allah, the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, I enter the bathroom to achieve every benefit and repulse every harm. So we're seeking Allah's blessing and helping doing this action. Likewise, of course, you're supposed to say it before you enter, and then you're supposed to enter with your left foot, and you're supposed to leave with your right foot. If you're using the bathroom outside, let's say you're camping or something like that, before you go in the area where you're going to use the bathroom, you say this. So I say there's a tree there. Before I'm going to turn and go behind the tree, I'm going to say this adhkar, then I'm going to do it. Okay, that's how you do it if there's not a clear demarcation. He's saying, A'udhu bika, I seek refuge in you. I call upon you, Allah, seeking protection, refuge and shelter in you, the only one who has power over everything. So again, we're vulnerable when we're using the bathroom. Doesn't matter how strong we are, we're vulnerable to both the shayateen, likewise as human beings. He's saying from the evil male spirits, or the filthy male spirits, and the filthy male jinn, the filthy female jinn, these two words have also been interpreted as evil and evildoers. The toilet is one of the places of evil jinn. Don't want to be there for long. Al-Hafid ibn Hajar al-Asqalani mentioned in his explanation of Sahih Bukhari, Fath al-Bari, that in some of the narrations of this hadith from Abdul Aziz ibn Suhaib, it has the words, if you enter the bathroom, then you must say Bismillah. So saying Bismillah, and he's saying here that some narrations say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min khubuthi wal khaba'ith. Some narrations say, Oh Allah, I seek refuge from you from al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith, without Bismillah. But there's another narration in Sahih Bukhari that says Bismillah. So you should say Bismillah, Allahumma, not just Allahumma, and so on and so forth. Or you can do both. Allah. That's what he's trying to say here. طيب. Also, saying Bismillah upon entering the bathroom is also confirmed in the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib from the Prophet ﷺ. The screen which is between the eyes of the jinn and the private parts of human beings, when any one of them enters the bathroom, is that he says Bismillah. And that's why when you take off your clothes, as we're going to say, it's recommended to say Bismillah. Because when you say Bismillah, when you take off your clothes, the jinns can't see your aura. Likewise, that's one of the benefits behind saying Bismillah before entering the bathroom. You should say it before entering the bathroom, not after. As far as mentioning Allah's name in the bathroom, most scholars say it's makruh, it's not haram. Likewise, bringing the mushaf in the bathroom is makruh, it's not haram. And then the karaha is removed if there's a need for it. And then you go into the issue of saying Bismillah before making wudu, right? You can say Bismillah before making wudu, even if the thing is in the bathroom. طيب. I think that's clear. طيب. Now the dua when you're leaving the bathroom, right? The dua when you are leaving the bathroom. The dua when you're leaving the bathroom is غفرانك. I seek your forgiveness. Why? Scholars speak a lot about this. Why do we say غفرانك, I seek your forgiveness, before or after, leaving the bathroom? Is using the bathroom a sin? No.
I was taught that you say that 3 times, not 1.
Well, from what I know, you only say it once. I might be mistaken though. Yeah. From what I know, you just say it once. Allah. Some scholars, they say you're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness because, I'm trying to see how to word this. Allah made it so easy for you to relieve yourself. So you're seeking Allah's forgiveness for your shortcomings and being thankful to Him. This is an important point, by the way. You have to seek Allah's forgiveness for your shortcomings, not only for your sins. Right? So, I don't think we sometimes stop and understand how easy Allah made it for us to relieve ourselves. Some people, there's Brother Akhi Ayman always mentions this, right? Some people, they can't use the bathroom, right? They have to use a bag. Imagine that, you're using a bag. SubhanAllah, man. Some people, they got shot in the stomach so many times, they have to use a bag. Right? I'm not going to mention that, but some people anyways, Allah musta'an. Oh, man. Anyways, I'm not going to mention that. Allah musta'an. So you're asking Allah to forgive you for your shortcomings and being thankful to Him for giving you this blessing of being able to relieve yourself so easily. That's one of the explanations scholars have given. Right? So there's a lot that can be said about that, right? So this is the wisdom that some scholars have mentioned. So we mentioned this here, we're going to stop with this. The saying of the Prophet ﷺ, I seek your forgiveness, is the acknowledgement that forgiveness of every act of sin and disobedience, as well as every shortcoming in fulfilling one's obligation. Right? Something that I think we don't stop and understand sometimes is we're sinful when we also fall short in fulfilling our obligations. And I think most of us fall short in it. إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ اللَّهِ. We might be able to stay away from certain things, but are we fully fulfilling our obligations to our parents, to our relatives, to our spouses, to our children? I don't think so. إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ اللَّهِ. I don't think so, to be honest with you. Our prayer, are we fulfilling our obligation to Allah? Are we praying? Yeah. But are we praying the way Allah wants us to pray? Are we thinking about this and that? Allah musta'an. So, we always should be asking Allah to forgive us. Right? وَتُوبُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا أَيُّهَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah says, ask Allah to forgive you, make tawbah to Allah, all of you. Allah does not do istisna, all of you. Right? In explaining the reason for seeking forgiveness on this particular occasion, it has been said that the human being is incapable of completely fulfilling the obligation of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So ask Allah to forgive us for not being thankful enough for this blessing Allah gave us, of being able to relieve ourselves this easy. and for failing in our obligations. So you can say that we're seeking Allah's forgiveness for mainly two reasons: not fulfilling our obligations in a general sense, right? And more specifically for this, not being thankful enough for this blessing Allah gave us. And that's why Ibn Rajab, he mentions that حقيقة الشكر الاعتراف بالعجز عن الشكر. Ibn Rajab and Muhakkak, he mentions that the reality of you being thankful to Allah is realize you can never be truly thankful to Allah. Why? If you're thankful to Allah, it's because Allah guided you to be thankful. Right? Allah gave you a blessing. And then Allah guided you to be thankful for that blessing. So you have to be thankful for Allah making you thankful. And you have to be thankful for Allah making you remember Allah and being thankful to Him. And that's why Ibrahim mentions كل نعمة على العبد الله سبحانه وتعالى في دين أو دنيا يحتاج إلى الشكر عليه. He says, Ibrahim mentions every benefit that Allah gives you, whether in your deen and your dunya, you need to be thankful to it. ثم التوفيق للشكر عليها نعمة أخرى. And then Allah give you the tawfiq, the ability and reminding you to be thankful for that blessing is a thankful. That requires you to be thankful a second time. And then a tawfiq للشكر ثاني. And then Allah making you thankful for being thankful requires you to be thankful. And Allah making you thankful for being thankful requires. Ibn Rajab mentions this, Sani. It's a cycle. So that's why Ibn Rajab mentions that the reality of you being thankful to Allah is realizing I can't be thankful to Him. That is the reality of being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So this is why we're saying Ghufranik. Right? Likewise, he mentions here. Likewise, Imam Shafi mentions this, right? وإذا كان الشكر نعمة الله عليه نعمة عليه إذا كان الشكر نعمة الله نعمة علي له في مثلها يجب الشكر فكيف بلوغ الشكر إلا بفضله ومن طالت الأيام واتصل العمر. Imam Shafi mentions this as a poetry, and if me being thankful for your blessing is a blessing of itself, then I can never be thankful to you, even if no matter how long my life is, and so on and so forth. Anyways. Likewise, we don't have to only be thankful for Allah making us able to relieve ourselves, but the entire process. We have to be thankful for the food Allah gave us, and then Allah making us able to digest food. Some people can't even taste food. COVID, right? Some people still have that. They can't taste food, right? Some people don't digest food properly, right? It comes out of them. They can't keep it down, so on and so forth, right? Then we also have to be thankful for Allah distributing the nutrition according to the body's needs. Allah is the one who actually made the enzymes in the body that breaks down the food. This vitamin goes here, this carbon, I don't know what goes here. We're not the ones that decide where the stuff goes. Allah just made it happen for us. So you have to be thankful for the food. You have to be thankful for Allah making you actually able to digest the food, not puking it up or something. You have to be thankful for Allah actually making you able to benefit from the actual nutritious traits of the food or whatever. And then you have to be thankful for Allah making you able to actually be able to get out the bad stuff. So there's four things you're thankful for. The food itself, you digesting the food, you're actually benefiting from the nutritious nature of the food, and then you being thankful for Allah making you able to actually remove the waste of the food. Right? So realizing that he has definitely fallen short in properly fulfilling the obligation of expressing gratitude to Allah for this great blessing, the human being must make up for this shortcoming by seeking Allah's forgiveness. Allah Akbar. Right? So this is what we're talking about. Like, imagine if when we said these things, you actually remembered these things. We'd be in a lot better state. If when we actually said these adhkar, just these ones that we covered right now, which are only like, 3 or 4, imagine how much more we'd be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the goal, guys, right? The goal, every single one of us just wants to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's the real goal of what we're doing. Right? So if we actually said these things and actually believed them and understood them, stopped and reflected upon them, I think a lot of us would be a lot closer to Allah than the way we are right now. Right? This is the goal, guys. So we'll end here, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.